Halftime show. David Dare steering the ship. Terry Ford with you. Tyler will be back on Friday, hanging out, of course, in Nashville, getting some time off. All right, so yesterday, last night, that was a little concerning for a while. I'm not going to lie. And these midweeks now, South Carolina has won every midweek game except the North Carolina neutral site contest. They won all the other midweekers. But some of them have been nail biters. Or not past the nails, you're biting the skin on your fingers. And it was a thing there. You're down 5-2, eighth inning. You claw your way back with the help of a defensive brain cramp by Winthrop. You take advantage of it. Bo Hollins with a bases clearing double. We'll hear Paul Maneri talk about it here in a little bit. Maneri's like, the way it's been going this year, I thought that thing was going to get caught. But Hollins gets the big bases clearing knock. South Carolina. Woo! Get the come from behind 6-5 victory. And just saying, in a season that's had a lot of low points after what happened at Auburn, then to come back and lose to Winthrop, no offense to Winthrop, would not have been good. But, and what it shows you also is, these guys are still invested in winning a baseball game. But easy, you're down late, eighth inning, 5-2. You could have been like, yeah, whatever. Let's get this thing over with and head over to 5 points. No, you find a way to scrape and scrap back and win the game. And now it's on to LSU Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, by the way, you know who the number one ranked team in the country is? LSU. A couple things, though, and look, first of all, you give the back end of the bullpen credit last night, 2 1/3 innings of scoreless baseball when you needed it the most. Zach Russell goes an inning and a third, only gives up a hit and a walk. Parker Marlott comes in, inning scoreless clean with a strikeout. Gets the side in order, 1, 2, 3. And you needed the back end of the bullpen to, basically sit on Winthrop and not let them move offensively while you can find a way to get yourself back into this baseball game. So back end of the bullpen, good work. Excellent work. So that was vital. And offensively, you just found a way to grind out some runs. Being down 5-1. Kennedy Jones had a big hit in this game to kind of get things going in the eighth with the pinch hit double that scored Evan Stone to kind of get it going. Made it 5-2. We'll hear from Coach Maneri about Kennedy Jones' hit. Then Henry Kazmar gets another knock. That brings in a run as Gaskin scored on the single. Now you're sitting at 5-3, and that leads to the Hollins double. So in the eighth, Kennedy Jones, Kazmar, and Hollins all with big run-producing hits. So got it done, man. That's what matters. W's a W. You get the victory, and now it's on to the LSU series to end the regular season. And, of course, Hoover in the SEC tournament, and then we'll see where everything goes as the offseason kicks. And, look, last night, and, we're talking to Jack Veltri during the Extra Point this morning. Jack, of course, doing fine work with Gamecock Central. Jack was at the game, and he was like, when Scobie hits the home run to make it 3-1 in the sixth inning, Jack was like, one guy comes out of the dugout to, congratulate him. And, obviously a bad sign at that point. It's almost like, where's that enthusiasm? I get it. You've had a rough year. You're coming off a rough series against Auburn. It's a midweek game. There's, you can count the fans on two hands in the ballpark. Everybody wants the season just to be done and start focusing on how to fix this and get it back in the right direction. But, yeah, I mean, you just hope more than one guy comes out to congratulate Scobie on the homer. Now, obviously, the dugout gets more juiced as you make the comeback. But it was just dead. I mean, that's my point. It's just dead at that time. It's 3-0. Scobie goes yard. It's 3-1. And still, there's not a lot of, not a lot of excitement. But this is just where everything is at right now. Fans, players, it's been rough. It has been rough. So LSU will finish up the regular season, and then it is on to the SEC tournament. All right, a little bit of sound here, Dave. Get your clicking finger ready. Get your clicking finger ready. Let's go with Paul Maneri first. I believe that's cut 2 up there, Dave. Just talking about the victory over Winthrop last night.
So I'm proud of our guys. Some of them haven't been real pretty. Like tonight wasn't real pretty for about 5 innings. I don't think we hit a ball hard until Scobie hit that home run. Actually, I think Casmore hit one hard right to second baseman in the first inning. But we haven't really a lot of good at-bats. But, we hung in there. I thought, we were pitching pretty well. They had 1.3 runs on 3 solo home runs. I think they were all on 3-2 pitches, if I'm not mistaken. So, we weren't pitching that poorly, really. And then we had 2 outs, nobody on. When Jarvis was on the mound, we hit a batter and then walked a batter. And, they got a couple of fluky runs there. So, but hey, the kids didn't give up. We got some big hits in that inning, not just Bose, but Hall and Casmore had big hits for us. And, when I saw that center fielder closing on Bo's ball, I thought that this is very typical of the year we've had. This kid's going to make a diving catch and break our hearts right now. And fortunately, the kid was just a little bit late getting there, and the ball fell and got away from him. And Boyd, his blazing speed from first base, was able to score.
So there's Paul Maneri talking about the victory. Now, again, you get good fortune also in that 8th inning. Chase Woda reaches on the fielding error by the first baseman because you got 2 outs at that point. Scobie had struck out, second batter of the inning. Petrie had struck out before Woda came to the plate. And then Woda gets on by the error, and that opens the door for Hollins to rip the bases-loaded double. And you heard Maneri, this is just look, we say this, we talk about this all the time, and you kind of got a little glimpse behind the curtain of Coach Maneri talking about the ball that Hollins hit. He was like, I thought the outfielder was going to make a dive and catch because that's the way it's been going this year. That's the mindset. The coach is even thinking, oh, here we go again. So in the dugout, you're thinking, here we go again. If you're a fan, you're thinking, here we go again. Heck, the umpire might be going, hey, South Carolina, here they go again. It just, when bad things happen to you, you can only stay positive for so long before the, oh, my God, here we go again sinks in, because it's just human nature. And that's just the kind of season it's been. But, thank God, outfielder doesn't make a diving catch. Ball goes by him. Rolls back toward the fence. It's a bases clearing double. So South Carolina gets that victory 6-5. Not to be lost in this, Kennedy Jones had a very important pinch hit double that drove in that first run of the 8th. Dave, let's get to that audio as Coach Maneri is talking about Kennedy Jones. Look, Jones this year has been nowhere near as good a player as he was last year. Why? I don't know. Could just be he had an off year. Could it be changes in philosophy at the plate about, being more aggressive? Has that screwed him up? I don't know. Has it just been him? I got no clue. But here is Coach Maneri talking about the thought process of Kennedy Jones coming up in that pinch hit situation and then delivering.
Kennedy's a more experienced and better hitter. And, you know, when you're losing, you got to take some chances. I mean, I didn't have another catcher on the bench if something would have happened to Crawford, but I figure what difference does it make? You know, we're losing. We got to try to get something going. And I'm real happy for Kennedy to come through with that hit. That was really big. You know, we're going to need him Thursday. I assume Kate Anderson's pitching for LSU, and you know, he'll be in there against Anderson and, you know, give us a right-handed bat against a tough left-handed pitcher, and maybe that'll give Kennedy a little confidence going into Thursday. You know, he hasn't had quite the year that he had hoped for. He's had some nagging injuries. Remember when he got hit on the hand with the pitch, his fingers, and he just hasn't had quite the year that we all would have hoped he'd have. But, you know, now he's at the bottom of the ninth inning of his career, you know, and it's nice to see him come through with a clutch hit, and hopefully he'll have a good weekend for us as well.
And we also have to factor in the nagging injuries that Kennedy Jones has had this year. How much has that hurt him? But you know, if you look at the situation when Jones comes up, Maneri had already pinch hit for the starting catcher Gavin Braylon with Blake Jackson. Now Ryan Bakes comes in behind the plate. Kennedy Jones is going to pinch hit for Ryan Bakes. And now Max Crawford will come in as your third catcher. So that was the situation at that point. But you're down. You got to pinch hit for Bakes. And Jones delivered with the big double. So that gets kind of lost in everything else. But Kennedy Jones, that was a huge piece of that victory. We'll hear more from Coach Maneri in the next segment as well, as Coach talks about. I want to try to get to this. It was going back to the Auburn game. That second game that South Carolina had a chance to win, and then Auburn won on the safety squeeze. Because Coach was asked about the strategy of that end-of-game situation last night. So I do want to play that just so you can get just the idea of what was going through Coach Maneri's mind as he was, you know, making the moves one way or the other at the end of that Auburn game. Obviously, things didn't work out because Auburn, again, got the victory. So I want you to hear that coming up next from Coach Maneri. We have baseball Thursday against LSU, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch, right here on the Game in Columbia and also in our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. And yes, the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway is still rolling. If a Gamecock batter hits a slam, you can win cash. Pot goes up $25 every game. Now it's to $550. Go to 1075thegame.com to register. We'll come back, hear more from Coach Maneri on the halftime show. David Dare controlling the ship. Terry Ford, we're going till 3 on the Game. 6-5, South Carolina hanging on to take out Winthrop last night. We've been talking about that here on the halftime show. David Ayer taking care of everything, making sure we stay on the air. Terry Ford, Tyler will be back on Monday here on the game. All right, so last night, Paul Maneri talked about a ton of different topics. One that was interesting was going back to the strategy of the Auburn game on Saturday. I believe John Little asked a question from the Big Spur. Just what his thought process was as things played themselves out late in that game. Here is Coach Maneri kind of, I just think it's interesting to get behind the curtain and just kind of what was going through Maneri's mind as he was working his strategy in that final inning. Cut forward, hit it, Dave.
Well, the guy on deck is the best hitter in the country, Ike Irish. Everybody thinks he's a first-round pick, and even though we had a lefty on the mound, I mean, I've watched that kid's career, and he's just been awesome. I was kind of, they were stealing us blind. They had this delayed steal that they kept doing all weekend, and I thought, well, if I'm trying to make up my mind that if they delay steal and get second and third, should I then walk him and have to face Irish and go for the double play there? Honestly, I never expected the safety squeeze, not for a second. If in retrospect, if I would have even had an inkling they would have done that, I probably would have just had Bo playing halfway to the hitter, like a crash position, But then the kid would have taken second base, and then I would have had to decide whether to walk him and face the best hitter in the country. So I decided, just let's play for the double play and see if we don't have to face him. And then all of a sudden the kid had perfectly executes a safety squeeze, and we had no play. So, you got to, give them credit for that. What hurt us was before that, the leadoff hitting the batter and then a pass ball that moved the runner to second base. So when you got the runner at second with nobody out, and the kid actually blooped the hit in. I think we had first and third, if I'm not mistaken. They had to hold the runner, but yeah, that's the chances of us getting Ike Irish out with the game on the line was kind of a difficult task, I thought. So, and I don't really like to walk the bases loaded, John, because you just hate to lose on a bases loaded walk. You put so much pressure on your pitcher to throw a ball over the plate, and then because he's worried about walking the walk-off run in, he ends up laying one down the middle, and then it makes it even more difficult to get the hitter out. So you like to give him a little bit of margin for error. So I was really hoping for a double play ball there, and when they safety squeezed it caught everyone by surprise, including myself. I just didn't anticipate that they would do that in that situation.
And there's Coach Maneri again going through it. Doesn't like walking the bases loaded intentionally because now you give your pitcher very little wiggle room. Didn't anticipate a safety squeeze at that point. Was playing for the double play. And I know when you hear didn't anticipate or thought about a safety squeeze, you're going, why didn't you? What's going on? You should know everything or think of every possible scenario. And you see, one thing, if this was Kentucky, who plays a lot of small ball, they steal a lot, they bunt, they do all the little things. And, I'm sure Paul Maneri would sit down and go, okay, here's the stats on endgame scenarios for Auburn. Here's what they do, here's what they don't do. With all the things we have in front of us, we never saw that coming. So a strategic win for Coach Thompson at Auburn and an execution win. Because you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but if your players don't execute it, doesn't matter, right? So really the number one thing is the execution of the play. Obvious thumbs up. And the strategy, it worked. So when it works, it's thumbs up. And I've always tried to, as I've been doing this longer and longer and longer, I try to kind of say, okay, first of all, if the strategy doesn't work, everybody's going to pile on and say it was stupid. Or what are you doing? I always try to take a step back and go, okay, was that good strategy? It just didn't work. And sometimes you have good strategy, it just doesn't work. So execution is key to any of this stuff. If that safety squeeze isn't executed and South Carolina gets out of that inning because of that play goes sideways for Auburn, then there's criticism about what the Auburn dugout was doing. It's just the way it goes. You got to execute. And yes, the beginning of the inning, a hit batter, a stolen base, that doesn't help you either, because now it puts you in a bad situation. But it was just interesting to hear Coach Maneri kind of going through how the wheels in his head were working at that time, because you're always trying to think 2 or 3 moves ahead. That's the goal. But I just thought that was good stuff. All right, also, Coach talking about, well, you know, he's really not big on these Tuesday games. He doesn't like Tuesday midweek baseball. Cut one, Dave. Coach Maneri talking about his distaste for Tuesdays.
Well, you know, I'm proud of that, actually, you know, because you look around the country, not many people do that. And I think the only midweek game we lost was to North Carolina when we had a tie game in the 8th inning and got away from us. You know, it's hard. You know, college baseball's hard. You have an emotional weekend, and then you got to turn around and play on Tuesdays. Like, I used to always play on Wednesdays because I always thought it was so hard after an emotional weekend, and then Monday's a day off, and then you got to jump right in and play on Tuesday. But when the SEC added their TV contract, where we had a lot of series Thursday through Saturday, I got tired of having to call schools because you never knew when you were going to have that week, and they didn't release that until like December. So then I'm having to call schools, and sometimes those schools had games scheduled on Tuesday and Wednesday already or something like that. So, you know, I just finally, a few years ago, just threw up my hands and said, I'll just play on Tuesday like the rest of the world, you know. But it's hard, and that's why you see a lot of teams lose on Tuesdays, because it's very difficult to put a weekend behind you, whether you played great and won them all, or whether you got beat all 3 games or something in between.
I mean, it makes sense, right? But when you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday games, you got to play Tuesday midweek. You just do, and the way the schedule plays out, and you're playing these Tuesday midweeks, it's only a day. If you played Sunday, you're a day away from a Tuesday game. Short turnaround. You're using your typically number 4 starter, and the other team is it's going to be a starter that you have not seen and most likely will never see again. And it could be a guy with some type of ability or skill set that you just haven't seen at all. So, that midweek, that Tuesday game is built for you to have a tough time. And in this season that has been so sideways, the idea that South Carolina did navigate that minefield against all these mid-majors without losing one game, it's just interesting. All right, last one, Dave, real quick. Ethan Petrie played last night. Give Ethan Petrie a ton of props for getting back out on the field when he had no reason to. Here's Paul Maneri, Cut 5, Dave, about Ethan Petrie.
So I was gone the last 2 days. I made a recruiting trip to try to get somebody some prospects for next year. So I actually wasn't at practice yesterday, and I got a text message from our trainer Corey Barton. He said, "Hey, I've got some good news. Petrie's feeling good, and he took some batting practice today, and I think he's going to be ready to play tomorrow." So I was on the road, like I said, traveling. I was on airplanes for 2 days, and when I had a break in the Atlanta airport, I sent Petrie a text message, and he said, "Yeah, I feel great, and anxious to get in there. I can definitely play tomorrow." So I was real excited about that, as you might imagine, and it was totally up to him and the trainer, and I wasn't pushing it at all, but obviously, Ethan could have just bowed out and, called it a season, but he wanted to get back in there and give it the old college try, so to speak. And, it was a big uplift to everybody on the team. We were real happy that he went out there and tried it. I don't know how he feels right now, but he gave it a shot, and, I really respect him for that.
Yeah, Ethan Petrie could have shut her down. He's a top 65 prospect in the MLB draft. He could have absolutely just said, I'm good. Thanks for everything, guys. The season, obviously, it's been lost. Petrie could have just healed up and got himself ready for the next phase of his career. But nope, he wanted to gut it out, come back, finish up the season. And if he wouldn't have, I don't think anybody could have criticized him for it. So, Ethan Petrie making his teammates quite happy last night. The Game, in case you just started hanging out and listening, we are here in Columbia at 107.5 The Game. Also, we have affiliates in Florence at 100.3 The Game and Myrtle Beach at 100.3 The Game. So you can listen to us no matter where you're trolling around. Also, we have our app, the 107.5 The Game app. You can get it on iTunes or Google Play. So we are everywhere. We video stream as well at The Game Radio TV on YouTube. So you can watch us. You can listen on your phone. You can listen in your car. We're everywhere, Dave. We're just everywhere. We are all over the place. You can't get away from us. You just can't. Just in case you just woke up, a very interesting story that I'm kind of stealing from Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark about the recruiting world. A high school football tackle. How much money is he going to get to go to Miami? We'll talk about that next here on the halftime show on The Game. Just in case you just woke up, halftime show here on the game. If you just woke up and you're like, I fell asleep last night, what's been happening? Well, one of the things that was happening is we're going to get the NFL schedule released later tonight. We've already got trickles of it. Philadelphia and Dallas will open up the season on Thursday Night Football. The Thanksgiving Day games are also trickling out. Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving, as Kansas City will go to Dallas. We've got the international games. Look, I'm just going to be just straight up about the international games. I'm supposed to care because it's like my job to care or pretend I care about every NFL game. The international games, I'll get up and turn them on when I get up. I got the NFL pregame shows like on my laptop or my one TV. I've got the overseas international game on the other TV. Sometimes they're good games. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the matchup is more compelling than you think. Sometimes it's a dog. It's just usually, I don't know, it's just a different vibe. I pay attention to it because I have to, but it's not like, ooh, can't wait for that international game in Dublin. The hell's that do for me? I'm sitting here in South Carolina. I'm not in Dublin. It's just a morning football game. It gives me an extra game. I guess that's good. But I don't get jacked up for these international games. Whatever. You know, it's just me. I don't hate them, but I'm just like, I turn them on, but it's not like I got to set my alarm. Make sure I'm up for that international game. Yeah. Can't wait to see that baby from Germany. But we've heard about the international games. And, you know, Cowboys and Eagles open the season's a no-brainer because it's the Cowboys. The Cowboys are America's most polarizing team. Either you love them or you hate them, but you watch them. You watch them, you hate watch them, and hope they lose. Or you watch them because you're a bandwagon Cowboy fan who, you know, lives in Missoula, Montana. And your dad loved the Cowboys because they were winning every year when your dad was watching football. And now you're just a bandwagon Cowboy fan too. Whatever it is. Cowboys always get eyeballs, and the Eagles are defending Super Bowl champions, and it's a division clash in the NFC East. So the schedule will come out tonight, and the NFL is just so good at promoting and marketing their product. They've been just like, they've been leaking games all week, and now the full schedule comes out. And tomorrow, there'll be guys in NFL markets on sports talk stations, on the internet, on social media. Folks who cover the NFL will be predicting their team's one-loss record in May. By the way, I never did that. I always gave out my prediction the week before the kickoff of the season. Because to me, in May, it's like, look, you can still add to your roster. Guys can still get hurt. A lot of things can happen. Why am I going to go through the schedule and predict games in May for games that don't kick off until August? I don't really even do that with the South Carolina schedule. I just don't. I mean, we could kind of do it, you might be adding a player or two. Once you get to summer camp, you can start predicting the schedule if you want. I try to stay away from that until wait till you get, near the end of camp. But people are going to do it tomorrow because that's what you do in the NFL market in May when you're dying for content to talk about. So NFL schedule will be let loose later tonight. And, conceivably more people will watch NFL schedule release than will watch a regular season NBA game, Major League Baseball game, NHL hockey game, whatever. Because that's what the NFL does. I really think that they've done something to hypnotize us. Because the minute the NFL does anything, we watch it. The Pro Bowl was a terrible, terrible, terrible piece of television. More people watch the Pro Bowl than watch, like, Major League Baseball and NBA playoff games. Seriously. But nobody would ever admit they watch a Pro Bowl. It's sort of like adult websites, Dave. Nobody admits they ever look at one, but all I know is this. If you ever look at the money-making entities on the internet, adult websites. Or like, remember the National Enquirer? Nobody ever admitted they bought the National Enquirer. That's a rag. That's stupid. That stuff is just gossip. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. Who was making billions of dollars? National Enquirer. Somebody was buying it. So it's like the Pro Bowl.
Still have my Bat Boy issue.
Remember Bat Boy. Remember that guy.
Met with Clinton and Bush.
And somebody always got kidnapped by an alien. Always. The National Enquirer had Bat Boy, and I was kidnapped by the aliens.
Yep.
And I'll tell my story. But nobody bought those. Everybody said those things were rags and embarrassing. And all I know is the National Enquirer every year was making millions of dollars.
I haven't noticed those at the checkout anymore. They still.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Reader's Digest is there now. And soap
Reader's
opera.
Digest still exists?
Yeah. You know what I know? The other day I was at the checkout at Kroger. Usually I use the automatic checkout. I just do it myself. But I was at the regular old school checkout. And so I'm looking at the magazines. I haven't paid attention. It was like Soap Opera Digest, Reader's Digest, People Magazine, but no National Enquirer. Do they even print a magazine anymore?
I'm not.
Are they even still around?
Sure. There's a Soap Opera Digest?
Yeah, I
There's
was
like
stunned.
Only one soap opera?
There's like
on
2
TV?
soap operas on TV now.
What the heck?
They still have a Soap Opera Digest. I was like, wow, really?
I was like, Days of Our Lives. The plot's still the same.
I think General Hospital's still on. I think. And we know if we went and looked at this, it'd be the same people that were on those soap operas 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or sometimes, like, remember Days of Our Lives, Jack Black, who was Jack Black, and then he wasn't Jack Black. They had another guy. And then so they brought the first guy back, but they had to change his name. And
Soap operas are great for that kind of stuff. There's a guy who dies like every 3 years and then comes back. Or his twin comes back.
His evil twin.
His evil twin. And then you find out his evil twin killed him, but then he's not really dead. He's in a cave somewhere, and then they get him back. And he kills his evil twin, we think.
Yeah. And Stefano on Days of Our Lives. I watched Days of Our Lives all the time years ago.
I'm glad you admitted that on the air, Dave.
Yeah.
I went out with a girl who loved General Hospital. So in the beginning of our relationship, because, I was sucking up to her, I watched General Hospital with her. Like Sonny, whatever his name is, was a gangster or whatever. I did. I watched it for a bit because I'm like, it's so sweet how you watch soap operas with me. Yeah, I'm sweet.
My favorite was Santa Barbara because it was they would have these little things in there. Mm-hmm. Like, the girl would come downstairs with a towel on and the guy would go, "What you been doing?" She goes, "Well, the Jell-O was set in the bathtub." I'm like, wait, what is that? What kind of statement is that?
Well, we know what kind of statement
going on
is,
here.
We have to shut down your soap opera talk now, Dave. It's family radio. You and your Jell-O in the tub and your girls in towels.
Well, she was hungry. I don't know.
We didn't know what you were doing during the day all those years. Back to the NFL schedule. It will come out tonight. Just in case you just woke up here on the game. NBA playoffs last night, in case you missed it late, Oklahoma City. Look, the Thunder had the best record in the NBA. They blew out so many teams all year. They had a legitimate problem in close games. They played very few close games, and they lost some close games this year. And they blew some leads because, again, they were winning so many games big, they just kind of go to sleep, take their foot off the gas. All of a sudden, they blow a big lead and lose. But it didn't happen much because, again, best record in the NBA. Well, one of the things that a lot of folks were looking at going into the postseason, and I was one of them, how is Oklahoma City going to react when they play in close games, grinder games, sloppy type of games, rock fights? Because they played in so few of those this year, how are they going to react? Well, last night they reacted huge, 2-2 at home. Denver had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter early. Oklahoma City fought their way back and got themselves a W. They hit some big shots down the stretch, made some big plays. Denver, besides Nikola Jokic, all went to sleep. Besides Jokic, nobody for the Nuggets did anything in the fourth quarter. And Denver loses, Oklahoma City up now 3-2. And Cleveland gets beat. Their season is over. The Pacers put the Cavs out of their misery. First of all, give Indiana credit. They're the second-best team in the NBA since the calendar turned to the new year. Tyrese Halliburton, whoever said he was overrated, I don't understand you. But there's a legitimate question to get into at some point with Donovan Mitchell, the Cavs' best player. Donovan Mitchell's teams, where he is the best player, have not advanced past the second round of the playoffs in his career. Now, could that change? Sure. But right now, is that a thing? It feels like it is. We'll get into that maybe in the 2 o'clock hour. Why? All right, that's just in case you just woke up. We hit football, we hit soap operas, we got basketball in. Firehouse Sub text the hour next, 803-404-6100 on the halftime show here on the game. Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100 here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, David Dare hanging. Texter talking about baseball. Yeah, it's sad so few people were out at Founders last night, but Unfortunately, when you're having a season like this, it just wears down on everybody. And look, I don't disagree with that. And I've always said this about the fans going to games. You want all your ballparks filled. You want Founders, you want CLA, you want Williams-Brice, you want sellouts every game because you want a packed house. A packed house, a great home field, home court, home diamond advantage. A packed house is obviously, good for the game day atmosphere. It's, good for the bank account. It's good for everything. But that being said, when you're having a rough year, yeah, look, the cliche is always you gotta be there for good and bad if you're a true fan. As I've gotten older, I've kind of pushed that aside. I really have. Especially in a world we've got so many entertainment options, so many things we could be doing with our time. If your favorite team is terrible and they're having a bad year, or they're not what they were supposed to be, or whatever the negative is, the negative story of your favorite team season. You meet human nature, you're sitting there going, okay, I've been to a few of these games, they stink, the year's pretty much over. I don't want to go and be depressed. Got a better idea. Let's go to a movie. Let's binge something on Netflix. Let's, go to the beach. Let's do something else. I'll keep up with the game on my phone. I'll watch the highlights later on YouTube. It's just a different world. Doesn't mean you don't love your team or care. It's just it's like anything. Sports is entertainment, whether it's pro, college, whatever. It's entertainment for us as fans. It's a business, but for us as fans, it's entertainment. It's an escape. You don't want to escape to something bad. You want to escape to something good. And when something's been bad all year, you want to escape that. It's just the world we live in now. So I don't get into that whole, you're just a fair weather fan if you're not there while they stink. I just think it's a different world. I use the analogy all the time of if you go to a store and you buy a TV and you bring it home and the TV doesn't work, and you got to go through a bunch of crap to get the TV from that place so you get one to work again. Are you going back there? No. You had a bad experience. You're not going back. It's not. Anything in life that we deal with, anything we have a bad experience, we typically don't go back. Let's circle to entertainment. If you watch a TV show and it stinks, you don't go, want to watch the next episode? No. Not at all. If you're sitting around going, you're at the grocery store and you're like, what, I want to buy that. Wow. Pickle and pizza flavored potato chips sound great. And you buy them and you can't stand them and you throw up violently for 2 days. You going to buy them again? Sports is entertainment. Sports is a life experience. And if it's not good, sometimes you're not going to go back. You don't go watch a bad movie and you walk out going, man, that's the worst movie I ever saw in my life. I'm going to come back and watch it again next week. But we expect, because sports is so ingrained in our local fabric and local community, that we should be supportive no matter what. And that's good to a point, yes. But then fans also go, man, this is terrible and I'm getting depressed going out there. I'm not going out there. I'll keep up with it some other way. And, hey, we'll reset next year. So I don't really get on fans. Now, I'll tell you when I do. When you have a really good team and no one's going to games in sports, that's an issue. Because that's the opposite of what we're talking about here, right? It's like, why aren't you going? Your team's really good. That does deserve criticism. And sometimes that's something with ownership, with a stadium or a ballpark, or just something about the team and the history where people don't want to buy in. But that's a problem, and that deserves criticism. Whatever the reason is, that's not cool. Because if your team's winning, you should want to be out there and be part of the fun and the experience and the good times. That's good entertainment. So when you see teams with bad attendance and the team's really good, you're going, what the hell's wrong with you people? Good text, though. I appreciate it. 803-404-6100 talking about the lack of attendance at Founders last night. By the way, South Carolina obviously gained that 6-5 win over Wofford. LSU coming into town for a 3-game set starting tomorrow night. You can hear it here on the Game in Columbia. Also our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. 6:45 pregame Thursday and Friday, 2:45 on Saturday. That will end the season. Then we'll get the matchup what South Carolina will be doing at Hoover moving forward in the SEC tournament. Barring some miraculous miracle, nobody sees it run, the season will be over at some point in Hoover. But yeah, we appreciate the text at 803-404-6100. We'll get the football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Get our buddy Dimitri Ravenos on. Couple things we're going to get into. One, there's some talk of the conference championship games going away in college football. Well, if you looked at last year, teams were almost penalized for playing in the conference championship games. So in this new world of college football with expanded playoffs, do you really even want to play a conference championship game and put yourself in danger of getting knocked out of the playoffs? We'll get into that with Dimitri. Also, a $2 million high school offensive lineman. We'll get into that coming up in 1 o'clock hour. You know, the Nest is the place to go if you want to do anything pretty much for your home. New appliances, you know, for the kitchen, maybe new things for the bathroom, maybe a new tub in that bathroom. How about some plumbing, some fixtures? If you want to do some new things to the home, go where the experts are, the Nest. It's simple. Just call 803-978-2025, 803-978-2025. Call and say, look, I'm kind of want to redo my bathroom. I want to do some stuff. I want to talk to someone. So what will happen is you can put on hold, then you'll be connected with an expert in the field of doing what you want to do with your bathroom. And that expert will have a basic conversation with you and then invite you in for an appointment. You come in, you talk about your budget, your goals, your vision, your dreams for the bathroom. You'll walk around the incredible showroom at the Nest, and then they will set you up with what you want, your vision, in your budget. The Nest, 803-978-2025. Give them a call. All righty. Time to talk some football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging out with us. Obviously, South Carolina, things are a little quiet right now, as things will begin to ramp up in June. And then we have SEC Media Days. Shane will be the first afternoon speaker on the Monday, so the first day of SEC Media Days. So that's where we're at. Again, the recruiting front, right now things are kind of breathing, but that will ramp up as well. There's some very interesting talk on the calendar of college football because the calendar is just a mess, right? It is. We know it. We were talking about it the other day, how much of a mess it was. So when you look at the calendar and some of the things that are being brought up about the calendar, first of all, the one thing that is being thrown out is one transfer portal. Just one. And that's it. So have one transfer portal, get rid of the spring one, and just have one. And then there's the talk of, okay, how long is it going to be? There are some coaches that don't want 6 weeks because they're like, ew, do we really need 6 weeks? So that's one thing that's being discussed a ton, is what's going to happen regarding the calendar moving forward. What can be done? And it has to be fixed. It just does. And what are you going to do about early signing day? You have National Signing Day, early signing day. You just want to go back to the old days? Do you want to? I think if you should do something and you really want to get a little radical about it, you can move the signing day to right, I don't know, right before summer camp start. And that way a kid can sign up. He's good to go for his senior year without all the craziness. If people think that's too early, do you just go back to the old school National Signing Day and get rid of the early signing day? That early signing day in December is just too much. You got transfer portal opening December. You got early signing day. You got college football playoffs. You got bowl games. You got to figure out something there. Some of that craziness has to go away. Obviously, the college football playoff is there to stay. The bowl games are there to stay. Then you say, okay, transfer portal in December, early signing day in December. You got to move one of them. Something's got to move there. It just does. So that's a lot of the stuff that's being talked about right now in the college football world. Of course, none of that can get into effect until you get to, A, you expand the college football playoff, B, and more importantly, the House settlement. Once you get the House settlement done, then other things start to fall in place. And look, the House settlement, we know what's going to happen. The minute the House settlement kicks in, there's going to be more court dates being rolled out because the rev share is set at a certain amount of money. And there's going to be really, really smart lawyers who are going to pull up in front of a courtroom in their Teslas, their Bentleys, their Beamers, their Mercedes, their Lamborghinis, and they're going to go in and sue the NCAA saying you're putting a cap on earnings. And you know what that does? Breaks antitrust laws. So the House settlement is not an end-all, be-all in any way, shape, or form. Zero. But it is a starting point to begin other things. Once that happens, then you can talk about one portal window. You can talk about something with the calendar. You can start maybe moving some pieces after the House settlement. But then what happens after everybody goes to court and the House settlement, there's some things in the House settlement that get wiped out because they're obviously breaking antitrust laws. We'll see. We'll find out. But that's going on as we speak. There's talk. Also, college football playoff, Their committee is nearing a consensus, according to On3, to change the seeding process. It would eliminate first-round buys for conference champions. In order for this to pass, the College Football Playoff Committee must vote unanimously in favor. A straight seeding proposal has gained support from the ACC and the Big 12. But here's the deal. They don't matter. Not to be mean. Who matters? Big 10 SEC. And the Big 10 and the SEC, I'm guessing, will say, yeah, okay, we can eliminate first-round buys for conference champions, but in return for us to be on board for that, we want 4 auto bids for each of our leagues. And I think that will happen. Now, do I like that? No. I don't. I think you need to earn your way in. You shouldn't just have auto bids for your conferences. There should be a criteria where you earn your way in. You should have an auto bid for the conference champion. I'm totally on board with it. Besides that, it's all about your resume. And, of course, we know that process isn't very objective, but still. But I do believe the SEC and Big Ten are going to get 4 auto bids apiece. The ACC and the Big 12, word is they could get 2 apiece. So at the end of the day, we did the exercise this week in case they just got 1. Let's say they get 2, 4, 8. There's 12 right there, wiped out. Group of 5, do they continue to get an auto bid? The highest ranked group of 5? Then obviously Notre Dame's in the mix if they're really good. And that will leave you 2 final open spots after all of that's said and done. But at the end of the day, it feels like that's where it's going to go. 4 auto bids, Big 10, 4 auto bids, ACC, 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC. Because the SEC and the Big 10, they want to throw the ACC and Big 12 a bone, so we'll give you an extra one. And if you're the ACC and the Big 12, you're going to take it. Look, you've got no choice. You just don't. You have no leverage. Because, again, now do I think this is for the best thing of college football? No, but the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten can go, you know what, we're going to go start our own thing over here with all the teams everybody cares about. So, guys, guess what? ACC, you could have a championship game with Clemson and Arizona State. Go get them. We got all the big brands. So if you're the ACC and the Big 12, you take 2 auto bids and you're happy. You give the Big 10 and the SEC 4 apiece, and then you figure out what you're going to do from there regarding the group of 5. So it feels like that's what we're looking at here. But the seeding process should change. I think last year it was screwed up. If you're going to give anybody a bye, the top 4 seeds should get a bye. Conference champions automatically get in the playoff, but don't automatically get a bye. If you're going to continue with the bye with a 12-team format, it should be the 4 highest-rated playoff teams get byes. Just simple as that. And you go from there. If you're going to do it that way. I mean, I love these games on campus. I get the bowls. I understand it. It's all about dollars and sponsorships and revenue generation, and that's why the bowl games still matter. Everybody tries to throw tradition. Stop, please. College football and basketball have taken tradition, they've thrown it out of the car, and they've run it over, and then they back over it and left it there for the buzzards. Tradition is not the reason. Tradition's that thing you throw out because you have to, right? Like whenever you're wanting to go for the low-hanging fruit to kind of get your agenda pushed through, you go with, and let's not forget tradition matters. Not done. It doesn't. If tradition matters, Southern Cal and UCLA are in the Pac-12. So is Stanford. So is Washington. So is Cal. There would be a Pac-12 if tradition mattered. Plain and simple. If tradition mattered, Nebraska and Oklahoma would be in the same league playing every year like they always did. Tradition, whatever. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would be playing, and they'd be in the same conference. Tradition doesn't matter. Money matters. And that's why the bowls are still a useful tool here, because they are useful financially. But I love seeing these games on campus. It's very cool. But that's another change that's a coming. It is. And we're going to talk about the conference championship games with Dimitri here at 1:15. Our buddy Dimitri Ravenos with his Carolina Panther podcast. His team is driving us crazy. His team is killing us. And we'll talk to Dimitri about the conference championship games going away. That's one of our topics with him, because it's coming. I mean, the ACC last year, SMU was almost penalized for losing the conference championship game, which is insane. SMU was going into a conference championship game in the college football playoff as projected. But then getting to your conference championship game and losing, SMU might have been knocked out, and Alabama, who didn't sniff their conference championship game, would have been in, possibly. Didn't work out that way, but that was a huge topic of conversation at that time. I remember Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, was like, why are we playing a conference championship game if our teams could get penalized for being in the conference championship game? Because you shouldn't, really. I mean, the way it was last year, I got it. I mean, you can't change how you do things every week, but that's what the College Football Playoff Committee seems to do. One week this matters, another week something else matters. Strength of schedule matters this week, guess what? Doesn't matter now. Head-to-head competition matters, well, not now. So if you're playing a conference championship game, you really shouldn't get penalized. That's just me. So I believe they will go away. And they'll probably get replaced. If you get 4 auto bids for the SEC and the Big Ten, for an example, the conference championship game will probably get replaced with play-in games. Like, let's just throw one out. Let's throw a scenario. What the heck? Let's say the SEC has 4 auto bids. Let's say the top 2 SEC teams are automatically in the college football playoff. Then you do play-in games to get the last 2. Or maybe you take the top 3 and you're going to do a play-in round that replaces a conference championship game to get the 4th team. These kind of things are the way you still generate revenue. You still have some relevance to an end-of-season type of game in your conference. And that the winner of any of that will end up in the college football playoff. And the ACC and the Big 12, you know, if they do get 2 auto bids, obviously the conference champion gets the auto bid, number 1. And the number 2, you can do a little mini playoff, a little play-in round thing. Again, you're generating revenue without a conference championship game that could hurt you. Just saying. All right, Thursday, which I think is tomorrow. 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch. We have baseball. South Carolina hosting LSU, final SEC series of the season. You can hear it right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Dimitri Ravenos, who does the podcast. This team is killing us about the Carolina Panthers. We'll talk some college football and some NFL with Dimitri. That's next on the halftime show as we yap football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on The Game. All right, we're yapping football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. And when we yap football and we can't find anybody else to talk to, I mean, when we yap football, the first person we think of is Dimitri Ravenos. Almost slipped.
You,
What's up, dude?
People should know literally the second before you opened your microphone, I sent you a text that said, what is the deal? Are we doing this or not?
Oh, man. Hey, some interesting things are rumbling around college football, which we know some of them will never happen. Some can't happen until the House settlement. But one of the first things I want to hit you with is it feels like there is some kind of rumbling about these conference championship games. Because remember last year, SMU almost got penalized for playing in a conference championship game and getting beat. And they were going to get replaced possibly by an SEC team that didn't even get near their conference championship game. So it could get replaced with stuff like play-in games if the SEC and the Big Ten get like multiple auto bids, or maybe even the ACC and the Big 12 get an extra auto bid. Where are you at on the conference championship game deal, man?
Well, I mean, look, if we're going to go to auto bids, there should be stakes, right? Like the SEC, I guess we would have to call it the final SEC game. It couldn't be the championship game anymore because it should be number 4 versus number 5 in that game. The ACC and the Big 12, they should do. I guess for them it would be, 2 versus 3? I mean, yeah. If you are going to keep playing those games, and the TV revenue absolutely says you should, then you got to figure out a way it has stakes. You can't do what you had last year where the committee before those games came out and said, now granted, we all had to wait and see if this was true, but they came out and said nobody is going to be penalized for playing in a conference championship game.
Dimitri Ravenos hanging out with us, yapping some football here in the 1 o'clock hour on the game. Yeah, to me, I think that's where you go. If you're going to get auto bids for all these leagues, whether it's 4 bids, 2 bids, whatever, that's the drama, right? Okay, in the SEC, if it's going to be the first 2, get the automatic bids to the college football playoff, now you're going to play off for the last 2 bids, or however you're going to do it. That's how you build the drama, right?
Yeah, for sure, because a championship game is different from a tournament. In basketball, men's, literally, forget basketball. Every other sport, there is a conference tournament. You can't do that in football, and it's just too much of a toll on guys' bodies. So the championship of the conference tournament means something, even though you know that the champions, or excuse me, the team that loses the championship game in some of the biggest conferences, in all likelihood, is still going to the tournament, the playoff, whatever the case may be. In football, you are going to have to figure out a way to manufacture stakes. The sport is just too violent to extend the playoff any further than it already is, involve more teams. So look, to me, I know it's not going to be the same. Like, you're not going to have somebody hoisting the trophy and putting on that stupid leather helmet at the end of the SEC championship game. But it is the only way that makes me feel like I have to watch the game.
Right. Dimitri Ravenos, this team is killing us, Carolina Panther podcast. He does each and every week, much to his frustration and disgust.
We just recorded an episode today just screaming, why are all of these national people picking this team as a dark horse? Don't do that.
Hold on to that thought. We'll get to it. One other college football note I want to throw at you. Jackson Cantwell is the number 1 offensive tackle in the class of 2026. Now, he just committed to Miami. There was a big recruiting battle. Miami, everybody thought Georgia was going to get Cantwell. Then Miami wins that battle. And by the way, Drew Rosenhaus is representing this kid.
Okay, good.
Think about this, Dimitri. You have a high school football player being represented by Drew Rosenhaus, which I think is funny and interesting at the same time.
Yeah.
Now the rumor is that Miami's going to throw Cantwell $2 million a year in NIL to come to Miami. Now, obviously, Cantwell's going to say all the right things. I want to go to Miami because, Mario Cristobal was part of developing Penei Sewell, who's a first-round pick. Miami's an up-and-coming program. I love South Beach. I used to love watching, Don Johnson when I was a kid watching videos, whatever. But, if it's true, getting $2 million a year to go play college football is not a bad deal either. Do you go like this, hey, this is the world we live in, and it all trickles down? Or do you go, my God, a kid who's played as many college snaps as me is getting $2 million and he's totally unproven? Which way do you go?
I mean, I know that your listeners think I'm a broken record because I say this every time we talk about kids getting paid, but like the NCAA had every opportunity to figure out rules and guidelines around this and chose not to. Like this is the world we live in. Does it need some sort of regulation? I mean, yeah, I guess so. But I think that if you are in a power conference at this point, you have figured out whether or not you can be a player or not for guys like Jackson Cantwell. Now, let's give Miami some credit, right? Like Mario Cristobal has developed a lot of really good offensive linemen. Miami is a place that is used to getting marquee talent. All of that being said, the green he is interested in is the one in his pocket, not the one on the Miami jerseys, right? And I don't blame him necessarily. However, I would say, given the history of not just that team and that school, but let's say that whole metro area of Miami, let's make sure that money is real before we go signing away our future.
Exactly. You know what? I can't believe this is happening with that collective bargaining agreement. Oh, they don't have one. Never mind. Dimitri Ravenos hanging out with us, talking some football of the game. All right, so you do the podcast about Carolina. All of a sudden, they're a quote-unquote wink-wink dark horse in a really bad division. So why were you screaming and yelling, don't do this?
It just doesn't feel like this team needs the spotlight yet. I really do think they're on the right trajectory, but this feels like a year before the year. They are bringing in so many new pieces on defense. We just went through this with a rookie wide receiver that was supposed to come in and immediately establish himself as Bryce's number one. I think Teteroa McMillan has a very different ceiling than Xavier Liggett did, even if we like Liggett. I think things are moving in the right direction, but I think given the absolute overhaul this team had to do on defense, and I mean, let's be honest, we don't know if there's going to be a summer slide for Bryce or not. I think 7-10 is pretty realistic for this team. Now, given you mentioned it, like given the state of the NFC South, that might be good enough to win the division.
Might win the division.
But let's not put expectations on this team that they are not capable of meeting yet.
They do seem like, and the other thing too, and you can't help but think it does feel like it's the barge is turning in the right direction, but then does David Tepper, who's been locked away in some kind of storage container, does he find a way out and grab a hold of the wheel and run it right into an iceberg? Because, again, I don't trust that guy as, far as I could throw Charles Barkley.
There is a woman who is she started out as the president of his soccer club, Charlotte FC, and now she is the president of Tepper, whatever it's called, Entertainment Enterprises, whatever it is, who is credited largely with getting Dave to like shut up and go away as opposed to running and looking for a camera. She's like 30, 31 years old. Like she might be a business genius just based on getting David Tepper to move away from cameras.
As long as you say her name isn't Jennifer Hudson, we're good. We're good.
Wait, do you mean Jordan Hudson?
I mean,
Please,
Jordan, Jennifer Hudson.
She's worked so hard with the branding.
Yes. I still can't get her name right. All right, my friend. This Team is Killing Us podcast. Carolina Panthers. Where can we find it if we want to go see it now?
Yeah, new episode tomorrow on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts.
All right, my man. Next week, text me at 1:13 again, and I'll tell you what we're doing.
All right. Sounds
See you, boss. Dimitri Ravenos, always talking football with us on Wednesdays here on The Game. All right, we yapping football in the 1 o'clock hour like we do every day here on The Game. We will come back. Some of the other things that are rumbling around the world of college football. A lot of little things bubbling. Where this thing could be going before it's all said and done. We'll get into some more of those next here on The Game. We just blather about football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Terry Ford, David Ayers here. Tyler will be back next week. Nick Saban was being brought up regarding an idea of having a commission put together in D.C. to look into college sports and the landscape. That was brought up by the president. Also, Nick Saban's name was brought up as a chair or co-chair of this working group or committee. Problem is, Nick Saban's got no idea. Saban talking about this this morning. Matter of fact, it's Wednesday. This morning, ahead of his annual appearance at the Regions Traditions Pro-Am in Birmingham, according to Bama Online, said, quote, "To be honest with you, I really don't know much about this commission. I don't really know what the commission will do. I think we know what needs to be done. I just think we need to figure out who's got the will to do it. Learn one thing about coaching all these years, when you get into a subject like this, it's very complex. It's probably good not to talk about it off the cuff. So I'll find out more about it. And if there's something I can do to help college football be better, I'll always be committed to that. I was committed to do that as a coach, to help players be more successful in life, and I'll continue to do that same thing now." Now, this commission supposedly will be put together to deeply examine the landscape of college sports, frequency of player movement in the portal, unregulated booster compensation paid to athletes, the debate of college athlete employment, the application of Title IX to school revenue share payments, and even conference membership makeup and conference television contracts. It would expect to be a months long endeavor. Now, is this just talking, posturing, just throwing something out there to throw it out there to give people a bone of some kind of expectation of maybe something? I don't know. We'll find out. Again, I don't know the appetite on Capitol Hill or the appetite in Washington in general to try to tackle this thing, because it is complex. I know that the NCAA and the world of college athletics would love to get some help from the folks in D.C. If nothing else, just some type of federal law or federal laws to supersede some of these state laws that are being put into play to basically make the universities in that state more NIL friendly, to be able to lure athletes because of laws to where they can give more money to players in other states. And all state legislatures, honestly, if you have college athletics in your state that matter, your state legislature should be absolutely looking at laws that will make your universities in your state have an advantage over others. You just do, whether it's South Carolina, North Carolina, whoever. If you've got, skins in the game in college athletics, this is something you should do. Now, is it the most important thing to do? No. There's just things called schools and infrastructure and roadways and, quality of life for your citizens and unemployment issues and, things of that nature. Quality of living are a little bit more important. All those are more important than making sure that your state schools can pay more money to that linebacker than other schools in other states. But it's, that's something. If the federal government came down with certain laws that would make this playing field even across 50 states regarding those rules and laws to make them federal, okay, fine, whatever. That would be helpful. But some of these other things, it's really going in the weeds that, and I've said this before, myself as a citizen of this country, I want my congressman to focus on ways to make my life better and my family's life better and the citizens of our country, their life better than worrying about college athletics. I'm just being honest. No congressman, I hope, is going to run on a platform, want to make sure we get a good NIL law in this state. I could be wrong, but I just feel like I care more about lawmakers dealing with issues that make our lives better. That's just me. I just don't think Congress wants to dive into this rabbit hole. But the president did talk about a commission, and we'll see if it ever happens, and if Nick Saban's part of it. But that's one of the things going on right now in the world of college athletics. Interesting little deal. ESPN ranking the offseason of every SEC team. As we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. No. Not yet, Dave. Not yet. Hold on. Trick.
You gave the out cue.
Quick finger.
I was a little early, but you gave the out cue.
I know. You're on it, Dave. Look at you. I can't get upset, Dave. You're on it. It was good. I'm going to do it for real in about 3 minutes. Be ready.
All right.
Okay, according to ESPN, here's the offseason ranking for every SEC team. LSU is number 1. They, have hit the portal real hard. They've got Garrett Nussmeier coming back at quarterback. End of the year on a 3-game winning streak. LSU should be poised and ready to make the college football playoff. Oklahoma, number 2. Oklahoma did a lot of stuff. They went out and got a quarterback, an offensive coordinator. They did some other things to help out their offense. They're hoping their offensive line can't be any worse. They hope they've improved their offensive line to make a jump next year. I tell you, Brent Venables better. He'll be the ex-head coach at Oklahoma. Because those folks might be more patient than other big-time programs with legendary success, but the Oklahoma folks' patience probably thin with Venables. Auburn's number 3. You bring in a quarterback. Will it work? I don't know. But there's some other pieces Auburn has brought in the offseason, and with some of the guys coming back. And a lot of blue chippers on the 2 deep. Jackson Arnold, like we said, will be the new quarterback. We'll see. But Oklahoma's sitting at 3. Texas at number 4. Because Texas brings in talent, whether it's recruiting the old-fashioned way, transfer portal, whatever. Texas just continually churns in 5-stars. Steve Sarkisian, again, I was wrong about him. He's doing a hell of a job at Texas. Florida, number 5. Billy Napier had some momentum at the end of the year. DJ Lagway will be back. The word is he will be healthy and ready to go. Transfer portal, recruiting, things are pointing in the right direction. We'll see what happens in Florida. You're asking Tara, where's South Carolina? 10th. According to Billy Connolly, Shane Beamer did his best to offset some mammoth losses on defense with portal newcomers, but experience levels definitely seem to be down on that side of the ball. That will put a lot of pressure on Lenore Sellers and a rebuild offensive line to carry the load, but Sellers might be capable of doing just that. So South Carolina comes in at 10. Ahead of South Carolina, Missouri, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Georgia, they all round out the top 10. Below South Carolina, Ole Miss 11, Vandy 12, Kentucky 13, Tennessee 14, Arkansas 15, Mississippi State 16. Obviously, Tennessee gets hit because the Nico nonsense. Ole Miss it's interesting. Last year, Lane, the king of the portal, right? Remember, that team was like a team of all-stars ready to march to the college football playoff, and Ole Miss underachieved. Don't care if they won double-digit games. That team was built for the college football playoff, and at the end of the year, when they had to win games, they lost games. Early in the year, when they should beat people that they were better than, they didn't. That was an underachieving year for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. And we're not hearing as much of the portal activity as last year. So Ole Miss sitting at number 11 on this list. So that's according to ESPN, the offseason for the Southeastern Conference. Now, Dave, get ready. Get ready. Our craft beer card is out. It's new. It's shiny. Go check out all the great stuff that goes with our craft beer card. Go to 1075thegame.com, and you'll see this thing called Sweet Deals on the right-hand side. Click that. Then click on the craft beer card, and boom. Very easy, very simple. Lots of different craft beer locations are involved. So enjoy some of the best craft beers in the Midlands. Again, 1075thegame.com. Click Sweet Deals to check out the new craft beer card. Firehouse Sub Text the hour at 803-404-6100 is next on the halftime show. David Ayer punching the buttons to go to break. Terry Ford right here on the game. Halftime show, we are rolling through the 1 o'clock hour, which is a lot of football and really mostly nothing but football. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Firehouse Up Text, the hour 803-404-6100. Texter, this is so obvious. Hell yeah, I'm all in favor of the SEC getting 4 auto bids. Why? Because my favorite team's in the SEC. I'll take 10 auto bids in the SEC if it'll get the Gamecocks in the college football playoff. Yeah, I mean, of course. If you're an SEC fan, it's all about, yes, I want the SEC to have as many auto bids as possible because it gives South Carolina a better chance of getting in the college football playoff. Totally makes sense. Get you? Absolutely. Because I was sitting there, we always try to think of Twitter polls and stuff like that in this time of year where you're kind of working through the time of year where, a little bit more to find some stuff that's interesting. And one of the ones I was thinking about today was, do we put out a Twitter poll? Rumor is that South Carolina could get, or SEC could get 4 auto bids for the college football playoff. Do you think, A, yeah, bring it on, anything that benefits the SEC, or 2, no, I don't like auto bids. I want teams besides the champion to earn their way in the old-fashioned way. Of course, everybody would go, yes, give auto bids. So we're not going to do that Twitter poll. Because the SEC, if we did that Twitter poll in like Big 12 or ACC country, we get a totally different result. But yes, you want your conference to have as many bids as possible. Better chance of getting your team in. The SEC's not going to go, no, we want it to be fair. Being fair is the way it should be, right? But it's not fair. Not at all. The SEC, Greg Sankey's job is not to make college football fair. Greg Sankey's job is to do what benefits the SEC. It's very simple. And again, that's the problem when you look at college athletics, is everybody's looking out for themselves. Nobody is there to look out for the greater good of college athletics. That's the problem. But Texter, I totally get you. Thank you for the text, 803-404-6100, Firehouse Sub Text of the Hour. All right, we have our Twitter poll that we had yesterday. Poll question of the day, are you in favor of a 16-team college football playoff with the SEC and Big Ten getting 4 auto bids apiece? Yes, 54%, 46% no. And we did have a texter reply, 16 teams yes, 8 auto bids no. See, me, I'm not a fan of the auto bid. We talked about this earlier in the hour. Besides the conference champion, I think you need to have your resume speak for itself. Now, that takes me down the rabbit hole of committees picking these teams because these are all people and they're not objective and they all have agendas. I shouldn't say all. A lot of them have agendas. Tell you what, my next door neighbor, Skippy, he went to Texas A&M and his daughter, Vernadale, also is going to go to A&M. A&M, that resume, it's not bad. I'm going to vote for A&M. So we know it's not objective, and it should be. There's too much at stake. But the objective way is computers. No one wants to do that because you can't argue with a computer. And it makes for a very boring reveal show on ESPN every week because if you're yelling at a computer, it's whatever. So the computer's not going to happen just for the idea of it doesn't make for good TV or sports talk radio or internet screaming or social media belly aching. So we'll never get the computer back because the computer's about facts. So we're going to have a committee. That way we can scream and yell about how crappy the committee is, like I did last year. I just wish this committee, if we're going to have human beings doing this, there needs to be a criteria of, like the NFL does with playoffs. Tiebreaker number 1, tiebreaker number 2, tiebreaker number 3, tiebreaker number 4. Should strength of schedule be the number 1 tie-breaking element after head-to-head? And college, head-to-head, conference record, whatever, strength of schedule, do you want to put them in that list? That way, you can't change what's important every week. That's the one thing I would like to have done. Have an actual, this is the way we do this. Like if you ever look at professional sports, they have a tiebreaker criteria that goes 1 to a billion. The college football playoff should have some kind of criteria of what matters the most and listed in order. Does head-to-head matter the most? Conference record matter the most? Strength of schedule matter the most? What you did against ranked teams matter the most? Whatever you want to make matters the most, it should be in some kind of pecking order of importance. That way you don't deviate from it every week just to fit your agenda. That's just me. That's just me. But I got no problem going to 16 teams But giving all these auto bids to the leagues, I still think your resume should speak for itself. But I'm telling you now, the auto bids are going to happen, in my opinion. There's going to be 4 for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC. And then you have 6 left to a 16-team playoff. And if Notre Dame's really good, you know they're getting 1. And then you got 5. You're going to let the group of 5 still have a seat at the table, or you're going to kick them to the kids' table where, they got to have the really bad kids' macaroni and cheese. That kids' menu can be vile at certain restaurants. So what do you do? But that I do believe the auto bids are coming. And then, if you have them, to me, then you have to have some kind of play-in deal in your conference. Instead of the conference championship game, now you replace it with the play-in game for the college football playoff. Let's say, okay, if you just want to not play a lot of games because you have the college football playoff coming, let's say, for example, SEC, top 3 teams in the SEC automatically in. Now you have the 4 and 5 seeds playing for that 4th spot, something of that nature. Then you have a game that matters to get you in the college football playoff, but it's not a conference championship game. Appreciate the text like always in the Firehouse Sub. Text the hour at 803-404-6100. What's trending at 2? Coming up here on the game, get you caught up on the headlines. Baseball last night, a victory over Wofford. We'll hear from head coach Paul Maneri. And Pete Rose and shoeless Joe Jackson can now go in the Hall of Fame. We'll yip about that next as well here on the Halftime Show. What's trending at 2 on the halftime show? Sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. Terry Ford, David Ayer steering the ship as we roll another hour in the postgame show here on the game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. All right, so last night it was it wasn't looking good for a while. Really wasn't looking good for the Gamecocks. Down to Wofford at one point 5-1 going into the 8th inning. Then the rally. South Carolina in the 8th put up a 5 spot, went from down 5-1 to ahead 6-5. And thanks to the back end of the bullpen, Zach Russell, Parker Marlott throwing 2 1/3, scoreless. South Carolina holds on to a come-from-behind 6-5 victory. And a little bit of help, an error by Alan Bernhardt of Wofford kind of kept the door open for South Carolina. There was 2 outs. Bernhardt makes the error on a Chase Woda ground ball, and that brought up Bo Hollins, and Hollins then hit a bases-clearing double that just got under the glove of the diving outfielder. So, wasn't easy, but South Carolina beats Wofford 6-5. Coach Maneri, let's get to some sound, Dave. Coach Maneri, this will be cut 2, talking about the victory over Winthrop.
So I'm proud of our guys. You know, some of them haven't been real pretty. Like tonight wasn't real pretty for about 5 innings. I don't think we hit a ball hard until Scobie hit that home run. Actually, I think Casmore hit one hard right at the second baseman in the first inning. But we haven't really a lot of good at-bats. But, you know, we hung in there. I thought, you know, I mean, we were pitching pretty well. They had 1.3 runs on 3 solo home runs. I think they were all on 3-2 pitches, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, we weren't pitching that poorly, really. And then we had 2 outs, nobody on. When Jarvis was on the mound, we hit a batter and then walked a batter. And, you know, they got a couple of fluky runs there. So, you know, but hey, you know, the kids didn't give up. We got some big hits in that inning, not just Bose, but Hall and Casmore had big hits for us. And, you know, geez, when I saw that center fielder closing on Bo's ball, I thought that this is very typical of the year we've had. You know, this kid's going to make a diving catch and break our hearts right now. And fortunately, the kid was just a little bit late getting there, and the ball fell and got away from him. And boy, his blazing speed from first base was able to score.
Yeah, Winthrop's Ethan Wilson almost caught that ball on the diving attempt, but it got past Wilson, and South Carolina gets a win over Winthrop. Look, Winthrop won the year right now after that loss to South Carolina, 27-26, 11-10 in league. They're okay. They've had some issues this year. This is a team, obviously, you beat. You're better than, even in the season you've had. South Carolina found a way to come back and get a W, and it's been such a kooky year. As much as South Carolina has struggled on so many levels, they have not lost a midweek game to a mid-major all year. They have navigated that minefield all year where teams like Tennessee got beat. I believe it was Lipscomb. There are a lot of teams in the SEC who have lost midweek games. It's very difficult to keep your foot on the gas every midweek. It just is. But South Carolina, despite all the struggles, the only loss in the midweek was to a ranked North Carolina team up the road in Charlotte and a neutral site. That's been it, to their credit. Kennedy Jones had a big pinch hit. Kennedy Jones has not had the season he was hoping for. Obviously, there's been some injury issues. Just haven't been the same player, but did come up and get a huge pinch hit in the 8th inning that got everything rolling with the second run of the game for South Carolina. Jones was pinch hitting for Ryan Bakes, the catcher who had came into the game after Gavin Braylon was pinch hit for by Blake Jackson. So Kennedy Jones gets a big double to knock in the first run of that 5-run 8th. Here's Coach Maneri. Let's get cut 3, Dave, talking about Kennedy Jones and his huge pinch hit.
Kennedy's a more experienced and better hitter, and when you're losing, you got to take some chances. I mean, I didn't have another catcher on the bench if something would have happened to Crawford, but I figure what difference does it make? We're losing. We got to try to get something going. And I'm real happy for Kennedy to come through with that hit. That was really big. We're going to need him Thursday. I assume Kate Anderson's pitching for LSU, and he'll be in there against Anderson, and give us a right-handed bat against a tough left-handed pitcher, and maybe that'll give Kennedy a little confidence going into Thursday. He hasn't had quite the year that he had hoped for. He's had some nagging injuries. Remember when he got hit on the hand with the pitch, his fingers, and he just hasn't had quite the year that we all would have hoped he'd have. But now he's at the bottom of the ninth inning of his career, and it's nice to see him come through with a clutch hit, and hopefully he'll have a good weekend for us as well.
Yeah, Kennedy Jones with the big pinch hit, and yes, you're facing in a Katie Anderson of LSU. You'll be facing one of the best left-handers in college baseball. And if you look at, the Major League Baseball draft that's coming up, Anderson is looked at as one of the 3 elite lefties in the draft. And there are folks that think Anderson will be gone by the end of the top 10. That's how good Anderson is. So Kennedy Jones will be in that lineup against Anderson this weekend. But it was a nice moment for Kennedy Jones, who has just had a rough 2025. Also, Ethan Petrie came back last night, looked a little rusty, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts, left some men on base in some key at-bats. But Petrie just coming back is such a positive, and I give Petrie a ton of props. You could have shut this thing down. If you would have, nobody's going to complain. Nobody said you'd have been wrong. You're a top 65 prospect in the Major League Baseball draft. Your name should be called before round 3 is over at the latest. You got nothing else to prove at South Carolina. The season is over unless you have a miracle run at Hoover. You could have very easily said, hey, dudes, love you to death. I'm out. I'll come back and buy everybody some dinner with my Major League Baseball bonus money. But Ethan Petrie's back. He's going to play. He's going to play last night against Winthrop. He's going to play against LSU if he's, how he's feeling, obviously. And he's going to play in the SEC tournament. So I give Ethan Petrie a, ton of credit. Could have shut it down and no one would have said he would have been wrong. Matter of fact, there are people who would say, what are you doing? And I'll be honest, if it were me in that situation, I probably would shut her down. Because I don't want any time in the next week to have anything hurt my draft stock. I don't want to get injured. I don't want anything to happen to me. And I'm not playing for anything, to be fair. I'd probably shut her down, to be honest. Be like, nope, I'm good. I'm going to sit here, heal up my injury, and get ready to hear my name in the MLB draft. So Ethan Petrie being a good teammate and decided to finish out what's left of the season with South Carolina. Here's Coach Maneri. Let's get to Cut 5, Dave, talking about Petrie coming back for the rest of the season.
So I was gone the last 2 days. I had made a recruiting trip to try to get somebody some prospects for next year. So I actually wasn't at practice yesterday, and I got a text message from our trainer Corey Barton. He said, "Hey, I've got some good news. Petrie's feeling good, and he took some batting practice today, and I think he's going to be ready to play tomorrow." So I was on the road, like I said, traveling. I was on airplanes for 2 days, and when I had a break in the Atlanta airport, I sent Petrie a text message, and he said, "Yeah, I feel great, and anxious to get in there. I can definitely play tomorrow." So I was real excited about that, as you might imagine, and it was totally up to him and the trainer, and I wasn't pushing it at all, but obviously, Ethan could have just bowed out and, called it a season, but he wanted to get back in there and give the old college try, so to speak. And, it was a big uplift to everybody on the team. We were real happy that he went out there and tried it. I don't know how he feels right now, but he gave it a shot, and, I really respect him for that.
Yep, so Ethan Petrie will come back and finish up the season for South Carolina. And like I said, LSU coming to town starting tomorrow, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch right here on the Game in Columbia and our sister station, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. All right, so the NBA Draft Combine is happening right now. And everybody's on the panel, and they're all talking. Cooper Flagg. If you haven't heard, Dallas has stated they're not trading the first pick overall. They are staying where they're at, and they will draft Cooper Flagg. We think. With Dallas, with Nico Harrison, their GM, with his track record lately, who knows? But the thought is, if you're sane and sober, you're taking Cooper Flagg. Number 2 and number 3 are two Rutgers players. It's interesting. This is the thing about basketball. Rutgers has these two high-level freshmen, high-level gets by Rutgers, Dylan Harper, Ron Harper's kid, and Ace Bailey. The projection is San Antonio with the second pick will take Dylan Harper, the combo guard, and Philadelphia will take Ace Bailey, who either plays shooting guard or small forward. Rutgers didn't make the NCAA tournament. Just shows you sometimes, again, just because you get two high-level recruits doesn't automatically equal success, obviously. VJ Edgecombe, the shooting guard from Baylor, would then end up at Charlotte. Utah would take Jeremy Fears, the point guard at Oklahoma. 6, Trey Johnson, shooting guard from Texas. And shooting guard is absolutely the way he described Trey Johnson. He can score. And right now, that's pretty much all he's doing with his game is he can score. The other aspects of his game have got to get better, but Trey Johnson can fill it up. You scroll all the way down to number 9. Toronto Raptors with the 9th pick in this mock draft, Colin Murray-Boyles, South Carolina. Again, we've talked about this. Forget if you're 6'8", 6'7", 6'6 and a half, whatever. You look at Colin Murray-Boyles. He can guard multiple positions on the floor. Probably 3 positions he can guard. Good passer, high basketball IQ. You can run offense through him. The way he scores in college, he won't be able to do that in the NBA because they have long, lengthy, athletic guys that will swat those shots into the parking lot. But if Colin Murray-Boyles can extend his offense out to the three-point line to go with some of the ways he can get to the basket, Colin Murray-Boyles would be a good pro. Now, let's say Colin Murray-Boyles never is able to extend his offense to the three-point line. He'd be a poor man's version of Draymond Green and have a nice long career. Colin Murray-Boyles could be an excellent glue guy in the NBA at worst to me and can play a long time because of the skill set we just talked about. A lot of positives to Colin Murray-Boyles. And if he does become, at least a solid three-point shooter, he could really have a nice career with all the other things he can do. Good teammate. You watch him in the SEC tournament, in that game, that loss to Arkansas. I mean, he's beat up, getting knocked around, limping. I mean, to me, if I'm looking at that and I'm an NBA executive, I'm watching a guy playing on a team with nothing to play for who's out there leaving it all on the court. So Colin Murray-Boyles has been mocked to number 9 to the Toronto Raptors. A lot of folks think Murray-Boyles will not be around definitely by the time the draft gets to 20. But more and more smoke is coming up that Murray-Boyles will be gone by 12, which means, obviously, in my opinion, he will not be coming back to South Carolina. So that roster spot Lamont's holding might want to think of a plan B there. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Did you hear about Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson? If you haven't, we'll yip about that next here on the Halftime Show on the Game. What's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry, Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford, David Ayer hanging out with us tonight at 7. SEC Storied will be focusing on the South Carolina baseball team. 2010-11, won back-to-back college baseball national championships. Almost made it 3 in a row, losing the final in 2012. So that team will be highlighted tonight, 7 o'clock, on SEC Storied on the SEC Network. They've been running the 2010-11 College World Series broadcasts. Those games have been on SEC Network pretty much all day. So very cool to see that team get honored with this documentary. And just obviously, look, you followed the Gamecock baseball. It's been phenomenal. It was phenomenal for a long time. Whether it was Ray Tanner, June Raines, Bobby Richardson, who really got everything cooking way back in the early 70s. Overall, 11 trips to Omaha. 2 championships. Played runner-up on 4 occasions. So this is a program with a deep tradition, and you'll get some of it highlighted tonight at 7, SEC Storied, about the Gamecock baseball team that won back-to-back championships. All right, speaking of baseball, Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, among a crew who their lifetime bans have been lifted by Rob Manfred, the commissioner. I'm like this about the whole thing. Okay. All right. I've never been a person who defended Pete Rose in any way, shape, or form. And we'll focus on Pete Rose first real quick and then get to Shoeless Joe. Pete Rose knew what he was doing. Every clubhouse in baseball has, when Pete Rose was in clubhouses, had a sign that told you if you bet on the game of baseball, you would be banned for life. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew the rule. You call it a rule, a law, commandment, whatever. Everyone knew it. Pete Rose went, hey, I'm Pete Rose. They wouldn't ban me. I'm Pete Rose. I'm Charlie Hustle. I'm above the rules. So Pete Rose bet on the game of baseball. I don't care if he bet on his own team or not. Care who he bet on in Major League Baseball. He bet on Major League Baseball, and it's been proven Rose admitted to it because he wanted to sell a book after years of lying. And Rose was banned for life. No pity, man. You knew it. You knew the punishment, and you did it anyway. So now you get to do the time, which was your entire life. Now, do I think because Rose is no longer with us, is this one reason why this was done? Yeah, I can see that because I don't think Major League Baseball wanted Pete Rose walking up to a podium in Cooperstown, New York, talking about why he should have been up here years and years and years ago. And how he was screwed out of being in the Hall of Fame a lot sooner. And Major League Baseball did not want to have a celebration for a living Pete Rose in Cooperstown, New York. So I think part of it, Pete Rose passing away, yeah, I think it is part of it. There was some talk, in D.C., was there pressure from the White House? I don't know. I'm not there. Do I look at today's world where, professional sports have embraced all the gambling and the wagering because, well, it makes them a lot of money. And let's be honest, the number 1, 2, and 3 things professional sports cares about is money and money and money. So, yeah, it does kind of feel weird. You're banning guys for betting on games or betting on a game when it is in your rules, but then you openly have gone into business with gamblers. So is there a bit of hypocrisy in that? Yeah, I can see that angle. But Pete Rose did, but what happened to Pete Rose? Pete Rose did to himself. I've never, ever had any pity for him in any way, shape, or form. But I'll say this. Baseball has this, morals clause that you can look at in voting for Hall of Famers. I think what's on the field matters. Now, unless you've done some horrific things away from the diamond or the court or the rink or the field or whatever, if you're just like a bad human being, that shouldn't affect if you get voted into the Hall of Fame or not. But baseball picks and chooses how it uses that. You know, Ty Cobb was an awful human being in the Hall of Fame. There are some not great stories told about Joe DiMaggio in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people have heard of Mickey Mantle's life away from the diamond, Hall of Fame. If Pete Rose didn't bet on baseball, Pete Rose, even though it doesn't take a lot to Google Pete Rose, awful human being, and find a lot of stories, Pete Rose would be in the Hall of Fame. But some guys aren't in the Hall of Fame, and there's certain cards are pulled. Like David Ortiz. David Ortiz, there's steroid stuff around David Ortiz, but the media love David Ortiz. Great personality, very media friendly. He's in the Hall of Fame. Some other guys, when it comes to steroids, not in the Hall of Fame. And some guys aren't in, even though there's no evidence they did anything. Because the media, the sports writers go, oh, that guy had to be on steroids. Well, what's your evidence? Well, I don't have any. I just know he was. Well, how do you know if you have no evidence? It's always been my argument, whether it's Jeff Bagwell, Mike Piazza, it doesn't matter if I think they did it. If there's no evidence they did do it, then I've got to vote on their resume on the field. So all that goes into play with this next, observation. There's this thing called the Classic Era Committee who will vote for a Pete Rose or a Shoeless Joe Jackson to go in the Hall of Fame, and that's going to happen in a couple of years. Will these guys who are part of the National Baseball Writers Association, will they vote those fellas in just on what they did on the field? Now that their lifetime bans are lifted, that'll be interesting. We'll see. For Shoeless Joe Jackson, if he threw a World Series in 1919, he did it in a pretty strange way. Shoeless Joe Jackson hit 375 in the 1919 World Series. That doesn't feel like a guy who was throwing games. Now, have you ever seen the movie 8 Men Out? And obviously, that's a movie. And it's not just that movie, but it's people who are historians. They talk about Shoeless Joe Jackson as really not understanding what was going on. He just was like going along with his teammates. He was getting money, but he was just out there playing baseball. Obviously, hitting 375 shows you he was out there playing baseball. So there is legit questions of, did Shoeless Joe Jackson know he was throwing the World Series? Was he part of it, really, besides being on the team that was throwing the World Series? How involved was Shoeless Joe Jackson? Was he a guy that really didn't understand and fully grasp what was going on? But he did take money. I guess $5,000, I believe it was. So I think it's different. Pete Rose knew what he was doing. But did Shoeless Joe Jackson? I mean, that is really a question that is legit. But in a couple of years, we'll see if either one get into the Hall of Fame. Because both of them, before they did on the field, should be Hall of Famers and should have been first ballot guys. No-brainers. But all these other things come into play. But now those bans are lifted by Major League Baseball. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. The greatest day in the history of the world. It's May 14th. We'll talk about that next here on the Halftime Show on the Game. All right, time to roll through the greatest day in the history of the world, which is May 14th, here on the Halftime Show. David Dare punching the buttons. Tyler will be back next week. Terry Ford just hanging out with you as we get rolling. By the way, greatest day in the history of the world. Brought to you by Purple Wave Auctions. Unmatched service for a new era of equipment buying. We appreciate the folks at Purple Wave Auctions for sponsoring the greatest day in the history of the world. We'd like to throw you some old school. This day in 1919, 4 days after winning the Kentucky Derby, Sir Barton then wins the Preakness by 4 lengths. Sir Barton, by the way, you're saying, Terry, who cares? Here's why. Sir Barton then goes on and wins the Belmont to become the first horse ever to win the Triple Crown. That's why we talked about it. 1920, Walter Johnson, legendary starting pitcher, won his 3,000th game on this day as he pitched for the Washington Senators. 1967, Mickey Mantle hits his 500th home run off Stu Miller of the Baltimore Orioles. 6-5 Yankees won. Again, Mickey Mantle, 500th career home run on this day in 1967. And, it's like there's certain what-ifs in sports. And in baseball, some of the what-ifs were Ted Williams left twice in his career to go fight wars. So he lost years of his career. What if Ted Williams, let's say there weren't any wars in that time and Ted Williams didn't have to leave to go, be part of the military? What would Ted Williams' career numbers have been? Because they're filthy with him leaving. How much better would Ted Williams, home run totals? Had, I think, 512 career homers. What would it have been like if he actually would have played through those other years? Mickey Mantle. What if Mickey Mantle would have been healthy and sober? Mickey Mantle stepped in a hole early in his career in Yankee Stadium in the outfield, and he could never run the same. And Mickey Mantle, when he first came up, might have been the fastest player in the majors, or one of them. So without injury issues and some other issues, how good could Mickey Mantle have been? Legit question. 1977, the Montreal Canadiens beat the Boston Bruins to win the Stanley Cup in 4 games. That's back when Canadian teams actually won the Stanley Cup in a long time. 1981, on this day, the Boston Celtics beat the Houston Rockets in Game 6 to clinch the NBA championship. Yep, that was Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Danny Ainge, Dennis Johnson, that crew. 1989, James Worthy scored 33 points. Lakers rallied from a 29-point first-half deficit to beat the Seattle Supersonics in the Western Conference semis. Greatest day in the history of the world. 1997, baseball's Executive Council suspends Yankee owner George Steinbrenner for suing other team owners. Steinbrenner also was kicked out of baseball for a couple years, conspiring with that guy Howard Spira. And that really helped the Yankees start to become the dynasty they were in the mid-'90s into the new millennium. Because then they could run like a real organization without George meddling. This day in 1999, Annika Sorenstam shot an 11 under 61, the best score in LPGA history on a par 72 course. This day, 2004, Richard Jefferson scored 31. New Jersey in triple overtime beat Detroit, take a 3-2 lead in the Eastern Conference semis. 3 overtimes. Last playoff game to be decided in 3 overtimes. Before that was the 1993 finals between Phoenix and Chicago, a phenomenal game, by the way, that Phoenix won. This day in 2010, the Philadelphia Flyers, they were down 3-0. A 3-0 deficit, and they came back to beat the Boston Bruins in 7. So the Flyers, that doesn't happen. We know in Major League Baseball it's only happened once when the Yankees gagged a 3-0 lead against the Red Sox. 2017, Steph Curry scores 40. The Warriors come back to beat San Antonio in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. You think about that Golden State squad. They went to the finals, period of 5 straight years? 1-3? So where do we rank them? I mean, obviously the Bulls won 6 straight. Jordan took a couple years off, but the Bulls won 6 in 8 years. The Celtics are the gold standard for championships. Lakers had a nice run in the Showtime years. But Golden State, I think, needs to go up on the level of best dynasties of our lifetime. That's just me. And San Antonio needs to go there as well in the NBA. This day in 1918, oh my God. This day in 2018, the Supreme Court clears the way for states to legalize betting on sports, breaking a long-time ban and creating a potential financial boon for states and the gambling industry. Despite opposition from major sports leagues, the High Court strikes down a federal law that barred betting on football, basketball, baseball, and other sports in most states. And now almost every state has legalized gambling. And you make a ton of money if you have legalized gambling in your state. And what the legalized gambling folks do, they give a pretty good amount of money to the states as well in return for being able to operate in that state. And if you don't have legalized gambling in your state, you can watch the cars drive out of your state into the neighboring states that have legalized gambling because the neighboring states are getting money from your state. You can like it, you can hate it, it's the world. It's just where we're at. It's just where we're at. That's the greatest day in the history of the world. Once again, sponsored by our friends at Purple Wave Auctions. Again, unmatched service for a new era of equipment buying. Choose Purple Wave for hassle-free, no-reserve equipment auctions. Baseball tomorrow here on the game. LSU and South Carolina, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch. That is here in Columbia and our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. And yes, the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway is still rolling. If a Gamecock batter cracks a Grand Slam, you can win cash. The pot is now at $550. It goes up $25 for every game. You can go to 1075thegame.com to register. All right, Firehouse Sub Text the Hour coming up 803-404-6100. We'll also yip with our buddy Jay Phillips as we do the handoff to the postgame show sponsored by Little Pigs on Alpine. All that's coming up on our final segment of the halftime show. David Ayer's over there doing, I don't know, whatever he's doing, we're still on the air. Also, Terry Ford as we go to 3 here on the game. All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour 803-404-6100 here on the halftime show. Terry Ford playing the role of Jay Phillips.
I'm Jay Phillips.
Is Elijah Campbell.
Hi, I'm Jay Phillips. I love the Denver Broncos. I'm wearing an Arsenal shirt.
Hey, do you think there should be a minor league for the NFL?
How much time you got? And I don't like my team playing FCS schools. Am I doing this right?
Right now, perfect. If we shrunk you about 6 inches and shaved your beard.
Then I can maybe pull it off a little bit.
Yeah, and no backward hat.
Hat wearing forward for
You
Jay
know the
Phillips.
funny thing with the backward hat, and I used to love wearing it back. I always wore my hat backwards. And when I was doing it, Ken Griffey Jr. was doing it in Major League Baseball, and nobody had ever done that. And he was soiling the tradition of the game. And I'm like, no,
It's
man,
deemed controversial.
wearing a backward hat's just cool. So I wore
It makes
one
my
for
face
years.
look better. I do it not for practicality purposes, but just because of how it looks on my head. Like I there's some hats that I own that I will wear forward, right? Because I just think it looks better that way. I just think, given my facial structure, how everything fits on my face, that it just looks better when it's backwards.
I wore mine
With
backwards.
long hair too, like
You know why I stopped? Because I lost my hair. If I still had my hair, I probably would wear a hat backwards. But when you have no hair and you wear it backwards,
it looks different.
it looks weird.
But
Yeah.
for those who don't watch the YouTube stream or don't know what I look like, I've got hair down to my shoulders. And if you wear it backwards, and I can't explain why,
It just does.
it just looks
Yeah.
better. It fits.
I think when you got a
what
full head of hair,
going.
you look better with the hat backwards. I'm just saying
Yes.
for most people. So the only reason I don't wear one backwards anymore is I don't have any hair to hold it.
And the fact that I wear a hat at all makes some people mad, because I will say I have been genuinely blessed with
Yeah, you
a
suck.
good
I hate
head of
you.
hair. Yeah, with
I
a
was
really
not
good head
blessed
of
with
hair.
that same crew. I'm going to find the family member
Great
that started this
genetics.
bald thing, and I'm going to thrash them.
I defied it somehow. Like, it's because it's
Really?
supposed to be like your mother's side, like your mother's father.
Your mother's, your grandfather on your mom's side.
Yes, that man has been bald his entire adult life. My cousin's on that side of the family, right? So like the two boys of my mom's sister pretty much have lost all their hair. I don't know how I avoided it. Me and my brother and I both.
Maybe
full head of hair.
you ever thought maybe you were adopted
There's a good chance.
by like a Yeti? A Yeti?
This
You were
wouldn't be
adopted
the
from a family of
This would
Yetis?
not be. This setting right here would not be the first time that thought has entered my head. No.
But anyways, my mom's side of the family, there are women that are bald. So look at
You're
this.
doomed.
Look at this mess.
Doomed.
All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour 803-404-6100. Earlier we were talking about the obviously the whole thing with Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Two quick texts. One about Pete Rose. Yes, he wasn't a good human being, and yes, he did bet on the game of baseball, but you should move that stuff out of the way and just vote on what he did on the field. And then another one for Shoeless Joe. Yeah, I watched 8 Men Out, and I've run up on Shoeless Joe Jackson. I believe that guy had no idea what was going on. He was just playing ball.
He's practically illiterate.
Oh, he hit 375, didn't commit an error in the 1919 World Series. You ever seen 8 Men Out?
I read the book.
I mean, they lead you to believe that, again, Shoeless Joe had really no idea truly what was going on. He was just taking money. He said, here's Shoeless Joe, here's some money. Okay, thanks. So it felt like he was just collateral damage.
Yeah.
Pete Rose knew what the hell he was doing.
Oh, for sure.
And basically stuck a middle finger up at everybody saying, I'm bigger than the rules and there's no way you're going to ban me for life because I'm Pete Rose. And look, on the field, Pete Rose, first ballot Hall of Famer. On the field, Shoeless Joe Jackson was the first ballot Hall of Famer. And if you want to go down the road of, you can't with Pete because, again, that was in every clubhouse in baseball. If you bet on the game, you're going to be banned for life. Everyone knew it.
Yeah.
So that's separate. If you're just going to say Pete Rose is a bad human being, because he was, believe me, the internet will tell you everything you need to know. But that doesn't matter because there are a lot of bad human beings that are in the Hall of Fame.
Plenty.
When you
Numerous examples.
break the cardinal sin of the game and you know the punishment and you did it anyway, you got to do time. I have no pity for Pete Rose. I never have. But Shoeless Joe Jackson, I have a lot of pity because I really, from everything I've ever read, from historians of the game, it almost feels like it was guilt by association. He really didn't know what was going on because he was not a super intelligent man.
Yeah.
He was just a dude who was magical when he stepped on a baseball diamond.
Yeah, a lot of the evidence against him was pretty flimsy, including a signed affidavit that he was coerced into, where, again, remember what I said earlier. Shoeless Joe Jackson, practically illiterate, and a signed affidavit.
Think about it.
Think about that.
Dave was talking about, because again, Shoeless Joe Jackson's from South Carolina. Dave said his wife was forging autographs because Shoeless Joe Jackson couldn't even write his own name.
Yeah. So how do you expect, that's like one of many pieces of evidence that reflect on the possible innocence that he actually had in that scandal. We're just so far removed from it now. That's the type of stuff that we have to rely on in terms of it. But in regards to both players, I've kind of always looked at it like this. The Baseball Hall of Fame, or Hall of Fame of really any sport, should include the figures that you can't tell the history of the game without. You cannot tell the history of the game without Pete Rose, and you can't tell Pete Rose's story without the gambling scandal. You can't tell the history of baseball, too, without the 1919 Black Sox scandal. And the best player on that team who was caught in the crosshairs, Shoeless Joe Jackson, you cannot tell the history of the sport, the entire history of the sport of baseball, without those characters. And omitting those characters is intentionally trying to whitewash your depiction.
I'll agree with you. There's only one way that I'll go different. I'll agree with you in theory on that, because you're not wrong. It's like the steroid guys.
Yeah, can't tell the history of the sport without those guys.
You have arguably the greatest pitcher in the history of the game and the greatest hitter in the history of the game, not in the Hall of Fame. But here's my thing. I'll go back to Pete. He broke the cardinal sin, and you're right. He is all-time hit leader, for the love of God, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame on the field. But a guy who broke the cardinal rule knowingly, should we give him a day to celebrate himself where he gets up there at the podium and gets to bask in the glory of what he did on the field when he basically broke the cardinal sin of the game while he was managing and maybe even playing? We don't even know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah.
That's my one thing. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but do we put them then in a different light of saying, okay, we're going to put you in the hall, but you're not getting the day that everybody else gets because of this or that or whatever? Because again, without the betting on the game, dude is in first ballot.
He would have been in. Yeah.
And to me, and I'm with you with this, and people will try to compare the steroid guys to Pete. No, that's different. The original wave of steroid guys. There was no rules in the clubhouse saying if you take steroids, you're banned from the game. There was a federal law against it, by the way. But besides
and some of those players, i.e. Barry Bonds, never tested positive. I think people forget about that a lot, too. They never technically tested positive, but knowing what we know now about Balco, they didn't test positive because they were on strict regimens to be able to make sure they passed tests whenever it was time to take a test, and that their whatever sample they provided became undetectable.
Because of masking agents.
Yes.
So, to me, that first wave of steroid guys, again, now the second wave, led by Alex Rodriguez and some of these other dudes, the rules were then put in place. Those guys, I think, get looked at different.
Yes.
Because, again, they knew and they did it anyway. By the way, a little sidebar on that. Victor Conte, the Balco Grand Poobah, I read a really fascinating article with him. And he said, if you get caught, you're either arrogant or stupid or both. Because if you follow what they told you, there was no way you get caught.
The Balco guys never got caught.
Fascinating, because if you basically take the steroid at a certain time of the day, right? You take the masking agent at night at a certain time. They give you the time to take the masking agent. If you take the masking agent at the right time, you will never get caught.
Yeah.
So the guys who got caught were just either arrogant, stupid.
The biogenesis guys. Yeah. It's two pools of steroid users based off the labs they got their stuff from.
And if you
one got caught, one did not. We can deduce which one's better.
Exactly. And if you followed what they told you, you would never got caught.
Interesting with the Pete Rose thing too. I just thought about in terms of what his punishment ultimately ended up being, especially if he gets into the Hall of Fame now. Do you think it's a worse punishment to not be able to get into the Hall of Fame while you're alive, and all of what comes with being a Hall of Famer comes when you can't be around to enjoy it?
And I think that's why one of the reasons it happened now because he passed away. Major League Baseball was not going to let him get on that podium and celebrate.
Which tells me this was planned. I think this has probably been planned for a long time.
I feel like